Yeah, hi. I'm starflash250. Uh, I mean, I'm like 1500 elo, or I guess I dropped now, but um, I won the last Max tournament, and people know me by that, I think.
I guess this is it. People will know you by that. So now let's take a look to your profile. So expendable. You are all expendable. Attack. Pour into cities and strike them down. So I'm guessing you are speaking about the infantries?
I mean, this is actually a quote from Battalion Wars. It's like a sequel to Advance Wars, sort of. And a funny character says this line basically. So that's my status. I mean, it's funny because I used to attack really aggressively.
And now, why did you pick these 7 seals in the first row? Because I do like your row. It's impressive. I don't see any global damage. It's really cool. I like it. Why these 7 seals in the first row?
Okay, I mean, so basically, like, Kindle was always, like, one of my top picks. I don't even know why, I just, like, settled on to Kindle. I mean, she's just good, I guess. Adder is, honestly just all-around good pick. I like, characters that can basically be flexible. So, I mean, sort of, global damage is flexible, but I just find them boring. I would rather do other things. So, when I first started, I would play a lot of Olaf in Tier 2. But then I quickly transitioned into like a Max or Eagle playstyle more so. I'm surprised that like Sammy and Andy are even like that high up for me because honestly, I don't even remember playing them that much. I think realistically, like you can look at the top 3 CEOs and that's probably what you should like consider to be my main picks. I think everybody else is sort of in muddied waters.
That's cool, man. I like your take on it. So let's do this. There. Uh, you find global damage boring, so I am curious. Why did you pick hawke here?
Okay, so I mean, first of all, like feishui is like a weird map. I mean, I'm not that good at it, but I'm pretty sure like everybody agrees that Sturm kind of rolls this map over.
I banned
But
it.
obviously we banned Sturm for this
Yeah.
match, yeah. So that's why I was like looking at other picks, and I think from the map analysis it showed that hawke had a pretty high win rate or something. Or maybe I'm
Really?
wrong on that. I don't remember.
Maybe.
Yeah, I didn't want to pick like Von Bolt, so I went with something new, I guess. Also, like mass damage is just more picked in Fog of War compared to standard, I think.
Yeah, I think it's big. I always thought it was always big wherever you go because it's really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think about Sasha overall?
I actually quite like Sasha in general, but I think in Fog one of the issues is it's really hard to like calculate the exact damages of each turn, so it can get like difficult to prevent like powers from hawke, for example. I mean, especially like in maps where the income is higher. I think here it's not that big of a deal.
Okay, that's cool. So let's do this. You are now in charge. I think you have mouse control, right?
Yeah, I do.
Perfect. So let's go ahead with the rest.
I mean, honestly, I think this game was pretty short, but and I'm not super familiar with this map, so maybe some of the things I say are like slightly wrong, but I think in general, like one of the themes, if we look at the opening, like um a few turns in, like I mean this is all pretty standard, right? We go for the base and we go forward.
Yeah.
But something I noticed later is that you open artillery on weak side to try to break this pipe seam, right?
Yeah.
Personally, I don't think this is a super good idea because breaking this pipe seam, I mean, there's two reasons. So breaking this pipe seam allows you to reinforce a shorter distance.
Yeah.
But the thing about your weak side is, you're probably gonna like push your defensive line like to here at maximum. And so if you don't kill this pipe seam, right? You would do one turn here, and then your second turn you arrive at the front. And if you break the pipe seam, you still arrive at this front in 2 turns. And you're probably never going to push past this point, because the strong side is obviously 2 base versus 1. And I think the other thing about breaking this pipe is that if you look at this movement right here, streaming a tank to this forest is exactly 6 movement. So every time you build a tank, you can hit this pipe seam for free without like losing your early game economy tempo, because you're building iron artillery for this pipe seam.
I never realized that. That's really smart.
If you look later in the game, when I start streaming tanks from my weak side, you'll see that I hit the pipe seam every turn with the new tank.
That's cool. I never really realized that. That's good to know in the future.
Yeah, so like I basically follow what DJ said about this map when he played Fog. He's like, oh, I'm just gonna build tanks on my strong side whenever I don't know what to do. I mean, I think that's a pretty good general rule. It's you want to just like make tanks on your strong side. I mean, because like if they try to resist their weak side, you're obviously gonna win, right? Yeah. And if they try to push their strong side, you're just damage racing at that point. But like, even if you don't know what to do, it's pretty easy to just like kill free infantry, right? So,
and
I mean, just straightforward game plan. And then
speaking about pipe seam, this one there, I haven't touched it because I'm divided. I never know if I should blow it up or not.
So it's funny because I think I tried to break it pretty early, but I actually think that was a mistake. I think breaking this pipe maybe like mid-late game is better. Because, okay, so what this pipe seam does is it makes it so this base can reinforce this area really fast, and it makes it so the airport can reinforce like a better area. But the thing is, like, you're not really gonna be in this area like early game. So I also lost a lot of tempo breaking this pipe seam. You'll see that like as the replay goes, I'll be like pushing an area that doesn't really use this seam for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing the seam does is also it lets you reinforce your HQ, but that comes in much later as well. So like, yeah. So I probably made a mistake here building artillery this early as well. So I remember this move actually. I moved my infantry up 2 squares because I wanted to see the city. And I assumed that you had a mirror infantry here, and you would like hit my infantry, and I wanted to like brawl you a little bit in the early game. I'm not even like sure why I thought that, but that was the idea behind this basically.
Okay, that's funny, because I have played a lot of games in this map, a lot of game, and based on my experience, people that send the infantry on that road, they lose their weak side, and this is exactly what will happen.
Yeah, that sort of happens exactly.
But every like 90% of the time, people who do that, they lose their weak side.
Yeah, I mean I agree. That's probably like overextending, but I was inexperienced in this map basically, so that's why I also made that mistake. I mean, at least on the bright side, I have the like +10 attack because I'm a hawk.
Yeah, I have seen a few times this strat working, but that's rare. That's really rare.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you can see that like I also make a few mistakes this game, because I was unfamiliar with the map. But overall, I think like the general game plan of pushing every vehicle on the strong side for the most part is a good idea. So like yeah, you can see like we start exchanging infantry, and my strong side, I'm getting my tower here, and I'm not getting no contest, so it's very easy for me to secure all my cities. Yeah. But I did delay you a little bit. Also, about recons, I think like recons are good and everything, but recently I developed this habit after like playing with Torture for a little bit that like unless you have a specific plan you want to do with your recon, I think it's a good idea to never open recon. And the reasons why is, first of all, most of the time, if your recon arrives somewhere and you see infantry, you're not gonna be game to hit the infantry because you think the tank will back it up, right? Yeah. Like, let's say you saw this infantry with your recon, you're not gonna go hit it, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not hitting it, then your recon's not gaining any value. And let's say you did see my tank. What does that information do for you that like you wouldn't have done usually? Because let's say, right, you want to stream tanks on your strong side. You see that I have a tank on my strong side. You're like, okay, what do I do with that information now? It doesn't gain much, right? Yeah. At least for me, because on your weak side you're gonna be playing defensively regardless. So that's at least what I think. I usually like to transition to recons mid game, so I can see where the enemy's army are rotating to, and to like scout the formation, for example.
That's good to know. And that's funny because I think here one of the first top player that told me this, that Recon are better mid to end game, and this is always the way I see Recons in most map. It's only in this map that I have a Recon early because money, but most of the time I'd rather have a lot of tanks and then Recon. So I am very surprised to see you have that kind of state of mind, and I like it.
I mean, okay. I mean, there is definitely a downside. Is if you're playing other top players who like recons, and they have like specific ideas in mind, like I said previously. They're gonna, for example, they might on a map do something a bit unorthodox. If you don't see it coming because you don't build recons, obviously they can pull the win over you. But in games where like things go normally, I would say usually you don't really need recon necessarily. But like let's say you're playing like Master of Math or like Chufeng or these, they will do a lot of recons early game because they will only take like sure fights. They won't really just push strong side. So it's a bit playstyle reliant as well. Also, I don't hear you anymore. Are you still here?
Oh yes, I am still here. Do you?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I do. Okay. So, like I said, basically you have a recon here.
Yeah.
And you don't have a tank to cover your infantry because I remember seeing that your pipe seam took damage. I knew that you have an artillery in this area.
Okay.
So I just figured I would just go slam your infantry. And then you didn't have any backup. But on this side, I do overextend a little bit, but we just brawl a little bit. I stall you income wise. So yeah, like right here, I break this pipe seam, but I've delayed my artillery advance for like 2 turns, and this tank is going to an area where it's not really contested at this point in the game. That's why I think that it's like not that great. And you can see like I finally deploy my recon because I want to see if you're rotating to the left side or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just keep building tanks on my strong side, because as long as I can hold like this line, at least in my mind, I'll be fine. So I don't really need tanks on my weak side now. Yeah. So you slam me as well, and I see that you have your tank, on your strong side. So I'll start like backing up everything basically. Okay, so I remember thinking that this was kind of weird because you end up throwing your recon forward after seeing my tank, and I remember you broke this seam, right?
Yeah.
And I calculated that your artillery would be on the city because like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 moves, right? So it can't point itself onto the city. But I think I miscounted the turns because you later pushed this artillery up.
Yeah.
And it was 1 turn further ahead than I thought. I'm not exactly sure why that happened, but that's why this ended up happening from me. So I end up slamming this recon from the right side and taking artillery shot, I believe. Yeah. So the reason why I looped my tank here was so if it doesn't die to the tank shot, I can hit it with an infantry. And I do end up taking the artillery shot because I thought the artillery was here at the time. And like you can see that my tanks are rotating through the normal path instead of the pipe seam path. So that's another justification for saying that this break was way too early.
Yeah.
I mean, on the bright side, it allows me to do like a more flexible rotation with my copter, but it's like not super great. So like right here, you get a really good exchange because the artillery gets to shoot, and then tank on tank. And obviously my other tanks are not here yet, or my other vehicles in general, because I broke this seam. Yeah. I don't know if you counted this seam when you went for your attack, but basically if I didn't break the seam, I could have had backup. But since I broke this, you could take a free engagement.
Yeah, I think at that point I was like, it's already looking really bad for me, so I will just throw my stuff and hoping it will work.
Okay, that's because I thought that you counted my seam properly. Because the reason why I went in last turn was because I thought that your vehicles wouldn't be here because of the seam, but I miscounted by 1 turn. So that's what happened. But yeah, basically, if someone starts breaking their seam, you can pretty much approximate where their vehicle are. Especially if you look at the seam damage taking. For example, like an artillery does 40 damage base to a seam.
Yeah.
And I'm hawke, so it does 44, and then 1 tower is 48. So if you look at the replay and see the seam taking 48 damage, you know what's hitting it. And a tank does 15, and for every 20 attack it gives +3. The 10 first attack gives 1 damage, and then the additional 10 gives 2. So like these are things that you can look for. They don't always come in handy, but you can look for them.
That's funny because on GBA and Nintendo DS, the damage pull on the pipes is very, very different.
Oh, is it different? I thought it was always the same thing, but
no. The
I don't remember the card.
The artillery, I think the natural number is like 45 or 54. I'm not quite sure. So if
that's possible. Yeah.
If you got extra firepower, it's just crazy.
That's possible because in cart, I believe they shoot a medium tank on road or something like that. So yeah, it would be 45. But on Advanced Wars by Web, it's the neo tank on roads.
Yeah.
I think that's what I read somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I continue with the replay. Basically, after I take this trash engagement, I pretty much retreat for a turn. But like as you can see, like my vehicles are still arriving at my strong front at the right timing. So
at that point, I was proud. I was like, "It's going better than usual."
I mean, it is good. Honestly, like at this game state, it is pretty good for you because like you can see that I'm like a whole turn behind. And usually, every time a turn switches over, you want to be half a turn behind. Like by the end of your opponent's turn, you want to be half a turn behind, and at the end of your turn, you want to be half a turn ahead. And here I'm a whole turn behind, basically. But I mean, there's also the extra thing that it's like Sasha income, but
yeah,
it's mostly because I took a bad exchange. And like I blunder all my fucking units weak side because of the delay I did earlier. I wouldn't necessarily say blunder, but it is sort of a blunder because I'm basically just trading unit count for delaying like your push and income. It's not super great, but they do serve something. It's not just like losing free units. So, okay, so here's a thing that I understood less during the game because I remember when you went for the artillery, I thought you were gonna rotate your artillery, but instead you shot and all my vehicles were. I mean, you didn't know, but I knew that your artillery was definitely in this forest last turn because like shooting this tank, and I have vision on every other square that's 3 range, so it has to be in this forest. So I placed all my vehicles to be able to strike this forest, and you still shot. So obviously, like your infantry got wrecked as well, so you can't really meat shield for your artillery. So I knew that when the turn flips over, I'll be able to aggress again. So that's why the move confused me a little bit.
Kill something. Kill something.
Okay.
Use your artillery well.
Yeah, a lot of times it's better to keep units safe than like eating 1 infantry, I suppose. I mean, I do it too, so it's understandable, but yeah. So I remember that my recon saw that your vehicles were here, right? So yeah. I would try to push even further left and try to avoid these vehicles for a turn or 2 if possible. So yeah, so the infantry spots the tank, and then I go for the KO. And then I move everything forward, so if you shoot again, it's dead next turn, basically.
Yeah.
And the artillery also covers the right side, so you can't go for a flank. And at this point, my weak side, I'm just like turtling backwards. I was thinking that you might go for a HQ attack at this point.
That
so I started
my idea, but I didn't know where your troop were because of my lack of vision. I think at that point a recon in this front could have helped a lot.
For sure. So another thing about killing recons is that someone told me this a long time ago, but basically, if your tank kills a recon for free, that's 4k gold, right?
Yeah.
And if their tank strikes your tank back, let's say it does 5 damage and you do 2.
Yeah.
Your tank lost 3 HP in that exchange, and 3 HP of a tank is 2k.
Yeah.
So if you kill a recon and you take a tank hit back, it's always worth. And also it denies like the whole vision and the tempo. So because I had my mid game recon, it didn't have a chance to get sniped, and your early game recon got sniped. I knew where your army was, and you didn't really know what I was doing. So then, I thought that you were gonna go for my HQ, so I started streaming tanks on my weak side. But you were being a little bit indecisive because you didn't have vision, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, so when I saw that you shot and your AA moved forward, I knew that like I was gonna win this game because I wasn't like super sure because of this previous exchange where two of my tanks got bruised. But after you moved your AA up for an infantry kill, I knew that this was pretty over because.
I did
basically
that
you always
want to
hide your
vision, but looking back it was really terrible because you had much more units.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, this is my strong side, and regardless, you can't really back up this AA, even if, like, assuming we have even vehicle counts, you still can't back up this AA, so that becomes problematic. Yeah. Yeah, so because vehicles can't really join up with this army, I pretty much just get free strikes in. And also this copter movement was maybe a bit rash. So obviously you don't know if I have anti-air. So I basically just take the free shot, and then I spot the artillery with the tank behind the AA. And then I'll go for a copter on copter. And at this point, because you didn't go from my HQ yet, I was able to like get vision back a little bit.
Yeah.
So at this point, I knew that all your stuff are like very far away from my army, basically. Another thing that I was starting to think about was the tile counting from your base. So if you see my copters hitting you, right, you're definitely gonna deploy an AA.
Yeah.
And if you count, it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's gonna go here, or it's gonna stay in the forest at maximum.
Yeah.
And that would be useful to keep in mind. And I also started counting your copter movement because you'll see that my copters will dodge this range as much as possible. So this turn rolls around, and I remember seeing that like you didn't really hit much. Your vehicles are probably like just outside vision, or they're somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
So this recon spots 5 range. So if you count from here, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it doesn't reach this tank. And if you count from this base, it doesn't reach the tank either. So I knew that this tank was basically hanging. Okay, I don't know what the damage calculator is trolling. I'll just. Oh, I actually don't have a keyboard control, unfortunately. Okay, so basically I knew that this tank was free for my copters to hit.
Yeah. That's very smart.
Yeah, so basically if you're playing and you have vision at a certain distance, you can count from the first tile away from your vision for any counter units. So because I knew that you couldn't counteract this, I basically got a free hit here. And so like I position everything, and again, if you look at here, it's basically right outside range. This is the 7th tile. So I'm on this diagonal to dodge all the potential copters.
That was aggressive.
Yeah, and because I have my artillery here, you can't really break through from the right side either. And now that all my tanks are streaming in from my weak side, and like you see how I'm hitting this pipe, and then because this pipe seam is broken, my tanks can stream into my HQ as well. It's not super hard to fight 2 base on 2 base push. to my HQ. So basically on both sides, I'm sort of safe. Oh yeah, and I remember my copter saw this AA come out through this square. So I knew that at this point I should just rotate away my copters and wait for my other units to come. So yeah, I back up my copters and I just set up to take income lead. And I knew that all my tanks were, like all my new tanks were building from here, so I could like reinforce the city and not give it to you. But it's funny because I think that from the position that you resigned, it was maybe still playable, but it was gonna be hard.
Sasha, if I lose that building, I lose my advantage in income. And based on my game with Kanpai, he basically told me Sasha is good as long as you have more money than your opponent. The moment you fall behind your opponent in terms of money is the moment you lost. So I was like, I cannot like stop you from capping this building. I will lose.
I mean, that's basically true, and it is more true than usual because your opponent will always have a better day-to-day than you, since that's all you have as Sasha is the income. Yeah. But like usually, and this is always true, if you're down income for only a little bit, it's not super bad. But if you get down like 1 or 2 cities for like a long time, especially as Sasha, then it'll definitely cost you a lot. Because the thing is, like, at least if it was me, right? If I was in this position and I took all these hits, I would at least stay for 1 more turn. Because if all these vehicles die, I'll resign 100%. And if most of these vehicles survive, I'll try to maybe join all my vehicles together and do a center push.
Do you think with a center push, I can actually flip the table?
Well, not necessarily, but it would just be like an idea for something that I would try. Because I think like in Fog of War, it's very hard to play like quote unquote perfectly. So sometimes your opponent will let you in on these openings. So this is especially true because like in my experience, when I play versus like Rice Muncher, for example, like sometimes I would blunder early game really hard. I would back up, ball up, and then eventually I'll find like openings left and right, and I'll start eating vehicles again. And from that point, I can come back into the game. But I mean, it's obviously not always gonna happen. But sometimes you just gotta be a little bit thick-skinned and resilient. I mean, that's not saying like you should never resign, but you know. So if the game is not like completely lost, you can still give it another shot.
That's funny because most of the time against good player like you and Kanpai, by day 15 I realized I lost. Like there are some exceptions where I got lucky and this lasted for like, I think my longest game against a good player was like 18 or 19 days. I still lost, but that was longer.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can develop like good habits to like not take bad engagements or like not overextend, then that would definitely help you transition into the mid game. So I think like if you're able to just have the right ideas mid game, it can be anybody's game. So as long as you don't like overextend early and you reach the mid late game, you can always win basically.
That's good to know, man. Thank you very much. It's actually much faster than what I thought. I think you're the first guest I got that was this fast and to the point. So that was cool, man. Very impressive. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think honestly, if you are willing to improve, you should play COs that are more based on fundamentals. For example, like Sasha, you need to do very specific things, I think.
Yeah.
But if you play like Hawke, Von Bolt, or like mass damage, I guess like Olaf, Drake, Andy, you can play a lot of fundamentals and then learn fundamentals that way, because then you'll be a lot more solid as a player overall, rather than like depending on specific stuff.
Yeah, I usually when I do global league, I try to be divided Starflash ripping through videos. That's that's the DPSI. True. Um, yeah. I do use global damage time by time. Like I used to have a lot of Drake game and Olaf game.
Yeah.
But I think Hawke is the most boring in tier 1, but that's just me. I'd rather pick like Vumble or Grit.
I mean, Von Bolt is great. Honestly, if you want to improve fundamental wise, then you can just pick Von Bolt. I would definitely not recommend picking Von Bolt on like huge maps because sometimes it can be iffy against the Hawk. But yeah,
Von Bolt is fun.
Yeah, I think as long as you don't rely on COs that are like gimmicky, then you should improve a lot, like fundamentally.
Yeah.
Just like be careful of the just be mindful of the things that you do, like each specific action. Just like try to think twice about it, and then
I think the whole thing here, I want to main Sasha. I want Sasha to be my strongest tier 1 because I play like everyone except her, but she's my favorite in tier 1, and I really want to improve my Sasha. And I think the best way to improve Sasha is to play Sasha.
I mean, I think that's great and all, but I think sometimes it's map dependent as well. Like if you're playing like Shoshin Reservoir, I think Sasha is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
But if you're playing like, okay, so my general rule for when I pick Sasha was basically if the map is around 20,000 income, Sasha is better than if the income was lower or higher. So because if it's higher, Sasha doesn't really get any extra break points where she can get better vehicles or better vehicle counts than her opponents by a lot. But if the income is too low, she can't really leverage her day-to-day either. So basically, find maps that are 20,000 or 21,000 income split, and those are, in my opinion, generally the best ones for Sasha.
So what you are saying is this map, for example, the one we picked, is awful for Sasha.
Yeah, this map is like not great for Sasha, I think, unless you're going for like Rocket gaming or something, because Rockets are actually like not terrible here, but it would require the game to stall it a little bit, and
that's very
Sasha doesn't
good
really
to
want
know. I like it. In the future, I will know it. So you say more than 20k?
Around 20k, because if you're going to like 24, 25k, there are times where it's really hard to contain Hawk COP.
Okay, and now we got the DPSI. He says that spicy Sasha pick condition. I like spicy things. So is there anything else you would like to add more?
I think, okay, I mean, I know you don't play standard and you said you didn't really like standard, but I think I think some standard could help everyone improve their fundamentals. I mean, that's just my opinion though.
I used to play iPhones, but I got bored, so I just dropped all of my iPhones game and stopped playing iPhones. But I used to play a bit of iPhones. I played like 50 iPhones game, and these were all standard like, so they were not like standard, but standard like. And I like more iPhones than just standard, but that's not my cup of tea.
Yeah, I think high funds is a bit wacky sometimes. When I play high funds, I'm never super comfortable. I think like one of the best examples is when I play standard versus like Sif, Witty, or like Shock, like some of the other top players. I feel comfortable most of the like at the end of most of my turns, but in high funds, I just feel like I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like this is all so confusing, and then I just start like killing myself basically because I start making bad moves. Yeah, so that's my gripe with high funds. I think like a good proof of that is like I think recently I finally beat Shock, but it was in standard, and then I beat Sif. It was also standard. But in high funds, I always lose to them, so I think something about high funds.
Thank you very much for coming and taking your time. I enjoyed my time a lot. You're a very good player, as expected.
Thanks.
So I hope you guys enjoyed as well. So yeah, have a good day, man. Take care.
Thanks for